the next edition of our flagship Health Jankari series, where we'll host a much needed panel discussion featuring prominent photojournalists from across the India who are leading on-ground coverage of the pandemic. We have seen their terrific images talk over last few months, and now let's hear and speak about the pandemic. Our panel comprises of speakers, Mr. Atul Lok from New York Times. Welcome, Atul.
Hi.
Hi.
Just to clarify, I'm not the employee. I'm just like independent journalist and who's doing assignments for the New York Times and the other this thing. So I think you have to do correction. I think a lot of people here, even Soumya and Anandit also shoots for New York Times.
Sure. Mr. Ashish Sharma from Open Magazine. Happy to have
Hi,
you, Ashish.
pleasure.
Um, Mr. Mukherjee, independent journalist. Glad to have you. Ms. Soumya Khandelwal, independent journalist. Welcome, Soumya. Ms. Manisha from The Print. Nice to meet you,
Hi.
Manisha.
Hi.
And we have Mr. Himanshu Vyas from Hindustan Times.
Hi. Hello.
Welcome, Himanshu.
Thank
I
you.
also welcome our moderator, Ms. Tabina Anju, journalist and visual storyteller, to host the panel. Welcome, Tabina. Let's talk health.
Thank you so much, Swati. I mean, last time we had a panel discussion on reporting in the times of pandemic, and it was decided there and then that, they were really interested to have one more on photojournalism because these are the times we have been seeing terrific images by all of you and everybody else also who are not on the panel. So Swati told me that can you host this? Maneka, yeah, I can moderate the session. So finally we have our panel discussion starting now. And journalism has always been very, very difficult, but in the times COVID pandemic, it's been more difficult. And for reporters, at least we have the liberty. We can still report from home and not step out. But when it comes to photojournalists, you have no other options. You have to go every day out, and you have been taking terrific images, not even caring about yourself, your health, braving all odds and bringing us terrific, lovely images, and at the same time, heart-wrenching and heartwarming images from across India. When we talk about visuals and we compare COVID 2019 and COVID 2019 wave 1 and wave 2, so we see a lot of difference in last year. In the first wave, images of migrant laborers, long queues, they were en route their home, they were walking on the highways. And then we had health workers, doing the COVID testing for the first time, and long queues at the bus stop, outside the railway station, social distancing, those were the visuals, that we could see majorly getting published across our newspapers. But this time in COVID second wave, it was devastating, as we could see. So, those visuals from crematorium, visuals from hospital, people gasping for oxygen, people gasping to breathe. I mean, hospital wards looking for, patients looking for hospitals, patients wanting, ICU, such images were, seen in the newspaper. So internationally also, crematorium pictures were like international publications, they were the ones, it was dominated by them. So before we, so without taking much of your time, because, it's been very difficult and very worse phase for journalists as well. We have lost almost 400 journalists, including photojournalists, including video journalists, stringers, reporters, editors, alone in the second wave. So we all are frontline workers, but when it comes to photojournalists, you have really, really been on the ground, and you have been on the ground every day, dedicatedly. And out of 6 photojournalists we have in our panel, 4 of them are traveling right now. Somebody is in Uttarakhand, somebody is in UP, someone is Atul is in Gujarat, and then Manisha is in Bengal. So I mean, you have literally been on the toes. So we'll start with Atul. Okay. So I would like to ask you, like this time, internationally, crematorium pictures were, seen all over in the New York Times, in the Time magazine, everywhere, as compared to the last year. And overall, because you have been traveling, you have been going to so many states. So what has your experience been as a photojournalist shooting COVID second wave? And how has it been different than shooting COVID first wave?
To come to the straight to the point, I think like we are not the one who decides like whether it's like as an individual, like as a photojournalist. I'm not making a personal decision that whether it's like a crematorium images or this thing. It's a, by default, it's what the news is. This time the death toll was so high, and how do you show the death toll? Like like comparatively in the last season, when the news was something different, and this time it was uh, it was the death toll. Like maybe this when the oxygen crisis happened in Delhi, everything was first like people were rushing to the hospitals, right? I think the first imagery was that, like I think everybody was. When I saw that in Mumbai, I just told them that I need to be in Delhi, not in Mumbai, because Mumbai I was shooting a lockdown. I was shooting usual stuff like going to the communities, testing, whole lot of things. But when the news happens, when something is there, when you read and when you see, you need to focus on that. You can't just say that, oh, I'm not going to focus, because a lot of friends of mine also ask me, why do you want to show the images of death? I said, like, why not? If that thing is happening, and my job is to just go there and document and highlight what is happening. So if there is a number of deaths were happening larger, like in the numbers, we need to somewhere showcase that, like uh, and I think most of the photographers, like how do you convey the story, what is happening without the visual? Like that is the only way. The cremation ground is the only way where you're seeing, like for instance, like there's a place called Simapuri, right? If I'm not mistaken, Simapuri. They used to get regularly very few dead bodies, and when this crisis happened, they got like more than 50 dead bodies in a day. Or maybe like the guy who works there said, like anything between 50 to 100. And if that's the news, you need to be there. You can't just turn a blind eye and say that I will not shoot the cremation and I will not shoot dead bodies. If that's the thing, why not? Means I'm trying to be as not politically, because a lot of things happened. I'm sure like other photographers can touch also on that. Like there were photographers who were blamed that they taking pictures of the cremation and then they are selling them. I don't understand who writes all these narratives. We are not making a narrative. We are just simply documenting what is there. I'm not going making a call and telling somebody, oh, send a flow of dead bodies somewhere else. It's too insensitive to even think that. So if that thing is happening, as a photojournalist, my job is not to turn the blind eye whether somebody likes it or not like it. My job is to do what is there, document that, and convey further.
Thank you so much, Atul. Thank you so much. It gives us an overall perspective. I would just move to Soumya, because we are talking about Simapuri, we are talking about crematorium grounds. And Soumya, I believe your picture, which was carried on Times cover page, it was from Simapuri crematorium. Do you want to add something? And also, at some point of time on social media, people started calling photojournalists as vultures, So same thing, if you want to add a bit on this.
Tabina, when I was working in the Hindustan Times about, 5-6 years ago, I remember I was told that there's a policy to not print dead bodies in the newspaper. I proposed a story, and my reporting manager told me we can't do the story because you can't print dead bodies. But every once in a while, journalism has to take that step and say enough is enough. You know, all publications finally had to take that route. Time magazine came out with that cover. Atul Loke's image was already, doing the rounds, and Time's image came out on the cover, and everyone was like, "See, this is what foreign media wants to show India for." But eventually, you saw that the Indian publications followed suit as well. You know, India Today had a very heart-wrenching image on its cover, both in Hindi and both for English as well. And we knew that this was that one point of time when you had to have these images out there, because I got messages like, what you're showing is porn. I was like, what's happening on the ground is obscene. And if you can let that happen, then you need to see it as well. And I think that's the problem with all the narratives and with how they're being portrayed. It's about the fact that people can let them happen, but they don't want to see it on their faces, right? I think for me personally, photographing that bit, the very unusual bit about photographing a crematorium at that point of time was, whenever I'd seen death before, I'd seen a lot of people mourning it. But here, when I was seeing death, people were not crying. You know why? Because they had just stood in lines for hours and hours trying to get the bodies from postmortem, and then they were here at the crematorium waiting for another 6-7 hours just to get the bodies burnt. You get tired, you get exhausted, and it's only when the bodies are actually burning that people will shed a few tears. And this is unprecedented. I think it's important, when you go out during a lockdown, you see absolutely empty streets and you think that's what COVID is. No, that's not COVID. What COVID is happening behind closed doors. It's happening in hospitals, it's happening in crematoriums. And it's just, somebody has to bring that news to you, and we as journalists decide to do that.
Yeah, so yeah, we followed you, and we also did stories for print media, like, what's happening in the crematorium, and the ones who were, doing the last rites, So their stories, how difficult even it was for them. And so I'll take it forward. Now I'm going to Anindito. Anindito, I was seeing your photographs on Instagram, on Getty Images, your wonderful work. There are some heart-wrenching pictures of hospitals, you have visited, the government facilities. As an independent journalist and, and covering Uttar Pradesh and other cities, how difficult was it for you to have access inside? And what all did you see? Are there any stories that you want to share?
Well, as you know, we are speaking about Delhi crematoriums. Delhi was the epicenter, but the publications I worked for, they wanted a wider perspective, and COVID was not Delhi-centric. COVID, the second wave, is pan-India, and that had to be brought in somehow. We have all seen many burning fires and all, and my objective was to reach out in the hinterlands and see what is the condition over there, because as photojournalist, I believe every one of us have experienced seeing the poor in desperate conditions, but this time even the people with means, insurance, and the rich had the same kind of experience. So imagine someone with means facing issues getting oxygen cylinder or even a bed. What would be like for a farmer with a 2 bighas zameen? That was the objective. So I had traveled not too much, mostly around maybe around 200 kilometers in and about Delhi. I've been to Agra, I've been to Moradabad. I am in Lucknow at present, and the situation is much worse here. there are rumors, or I won't comment on this, but I have heard that even the name was changed. Some pneumonia. So in by doing that, they could show lesser number of deaths from COVID, and blame it on some other mystery virus or mystery disease. So, yeah, it was difficult in UP at present. I hear that there are directives that unless CMO authorizes, there is no way that someone can enter a hospital to gauge the situations. There have been reports of installing what you call those barriers, so that the crematorium grounds can't be seen or photographed from outside. So yeah, the situation in the hinterlands is much worse.
Thank you so much, Anindito. And this gives us a perspective, that's why drone cameras were used, because, access.
Exactly. Those are banned too now.
Yeah, those are too banned. But earlier, those drone images, so they were very heartbreaking and eye-opening also. Now we move to, because you discussed hinterland, now we move to Hindi heartland. We move to Rajasthan. Himanshu Vyas has been extensively photographing COVID, first wave, second wave. So tell us more, tell us what all have you been seeing as a photojournalist, because you've been out every day. I see your pictures in the newspaper, on social media. Tell us more, because you've been photographing Old City also, you've been photographing hospitals also. And Rajasthan was also worst affected. We had 19,000 cases per day. And today it's 500 cases per day. So at some time it was, on peak, and now it's come down.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to this nice discussion. It's very rare that photojournalists get in front of the camera and use words to say what's in their mind. Usually, whatever they have to say, they have already said it in the frame. Last wave was a bit different than this one. I mean, the first wave was very, very different. As said that it was more about the have-nots who didn't have means. So it was kind of very raw, very, very painful. And there was a difference in the degree of pain in the first wave and the second wave. The second wave was more kind of like a shock, like an axe cutting through the wood. The first wave was like a very, very kind of slow flowing, kind of sustained kind of sorrow. It was flowing on highways like a kind of in a very riverly manner. So of course the way we covered the first wave was a bit kind of, it had that element of an epic. It was in the highways, long rows of migrants moving on highways, reaching their destination, halting midway. The second wave was more instant. It kind of had so many stages. Like we started with remdesivir lines in Pune and Surat, and everyone was watching, so they are having COVID, oh yeah, so change the channel, and they watched something else. And suddenly the lines extended to Delhi and Jaipur and Chandigarh, and we knew that COVID was close. Then, so as a photojournalist, what I noticed in this wave was, first wave was kind of uniform. It was migrants going on, walking, bus stands, walking. It was very, very epic in visually. Second wave was like very staccato. You had remdesivir lines, then suddenly the lines vanish, and now you have oxygen. Everyone is running after oxygen. Oxygen is less. Of course, that was the news, and it was the news dictates what you show. And at one point, oxygen and the requirement, the people looking for oxygen, right? It suddenly vanishes, and suddenly you have pyres, and it's pyres everywhere. And in few days, in week, maybe 8-10 days when pyres are kind of used up, consumed thoroughly. And suddenly we have villages. Everyone rushes towards villages. What's happening in villages? Well, the pyres are still burning. So it was kind of staccato, the frames moving, shifting, cut, next, cut, next. It was moving like that. If you see it from a distance, it looks like that. And Jaipur was kind of peripheral. It's a peripheral. It's not a centralized city. It's not a Chandigarh. When yesterday I was watching weather on France TV, or maybe it was some English channel, and they didn't even show Jaipur's weather. It was Hyderabad, it was Delhi, it was Kolkata, it was Chennai. So we are kind of on the periphery, and we are watching what's happening in Delhi. Okay, so and the news kind of trickles down from Delhi to Jaipur, from Mumbai to Delhi. This actually happens. If you are covering Delhi or UP or Bombay, you might not notice it. But while things are happening in Delhi and you move into peripheries, into hinterlands, into the circumference of the country, and suddenly you find that if pyres are the news, you have to look for pyres in Jaipur, you have to look for pyres in Ajmer, you have to look for pyres in Byawar, you have to look for pyres in Badmer, in Jaisalmer. Because news is kind of dictated. It is thrown at the country from centralized position. And channels of course have a huge role. We can often see an anchor in a channel saying that we are dictating the news today. What does that mean? That's a very dangerous thing. If someone is deciding the day that this is going to be the news, and this happens everywhere, everyone starts looking for a similar kind of image, similar kind of, so these things happen. So in Jaipur, the pyre thing went for about 3 or 4 days, 2 days maybe. And then they kind of tackled it by distributing to a lot of crematoriums, but still for 2 days, it was there in Jaipur also. The oxygen thing was also there also. So we have to kind of show balance between what is coming from a centralized news disseminating area, and also show what's happening in the city, in the smaller cities. Like I'm in Jaipur, I have to look after what's happening in villages, what's happening in Dudu, what's happening in Bagru, in Sambar, in Pushkar. So what's important there, that also has to come in here. So it was kind of very, very fast-paced photojournalistically. It was very quick-moving second wave.
Thank you so much, Himanshu, for sharing this perspective with us. I mean, it's like how also like how we have to follow the news, and how we have to follow if crematorium grounds are in news. So like from the smaller cities also you expected to shoot, but at the same time there is so many other things that are happening that are exquisite for every state. But pandemic was it was kind of it was similar everywhere. It was yeah. All right, so now we move to Manisha. I was just looking at your work, I mean, and I chanced upon your pictures from Andhra Pradesh that you have extensively traveled to, and there's this interesting photograph also by you where where a person was compelled to make a makeshift tree home on a tree because of the social distancing thing, and so many other interesting pictures I saw on Instagram. I was closely seeing your work. So tell us about your travels. Tell us how was it for you to capture things this time, and what all did you come across, and also about this picture which I mentioned.
Hi everyone. So about that picture, which you mentioned right now, the 18-year-old guy who was quarantining himself on the top of a tree. He studies in Vijayawada. So he came back to his place, and after he came back, he contracted the virus. However, his home was actually they had only one room, and there was no place for him to quarantine. So he decided with his friends, they made a bed out of few wood and a few like some cotton and everything, and he decided to quarantine himself on the top of the tree. And when he reached there, it was his 13th day of quarantining, and I remember. So it's not the only case around that village. A lot of villagers have been quarantining themselves like that, and so we found him that time. So and so over there is in villages, it's very common that they do not have washrooms inside their place, so they have to travel a lot. But he had a washroom, but he thought that, because his family is there, he used to come like go like across the field. And uh, he also like the moment we reached there, so the office found out, not office, the police found out that we are doing a story like this, and he was taken to the isolation center then. So while he was going, he said that, I don't want to go. I'm more comfortable here because my family is looking after me, and I do not have any problem here. But it also, like how I wrote it in the caption, that it's kind of a luxury for a person to isolate and have a comfortable quarantine, because this is like, it's not a comfortable staying on the top of a tree, but he managed to stay there because he wanted to keep his family safe. And I somehow because I also recovered from COVID then, like a few weeks ago. So I was comparing myself with him. Like, there are difficulties when you have COVID, there are challenges with your health. But he, in spite of all these difficulties, like having so many problems, he chose to stay there. And yes, and from my travels, like right now I'm in Calcutta. Last week I was in Andhra Pradesh, and over there, both the places, something I have actually realized, that they do not allow to shoot in the crematoriums. And somehow that's why when the second wave of COVID, everyone's focus was on Delhi and Simapuri and Uttar Pradesh, Lucknow, because we could see the pictures from there. But these cities also witnessed, the crematoriums in these cities also witnessed a lot of deaths. However, no one is allowed to shoot inside. Like, especially in West Bengal, the government is very strict, and they do not allow, even reporters are not allowed to go inside the crematoriums. So I can tell you one incident, like when I was in Andhra Pradesh, I won't mention the city. Over there, we went during the afternoon, where we were there for like half an hour, and in front of us, like almost there were 10 to 15 bodies were brought. And we again at around 10:38 in the night, and the bodies were burning, and there were still bodies were brought like almost 5 to 10 at a time. But we weren't allowed to show that, or to shoot. So this is something which I have discovered through my travels, that it's like the focus is, of course, is always on like the northern belt and like Delhi or anywhere, but it was the similar situation of COVID second wave everywhere.
Thank you so much, Manisha. We'll come back to you in second round. Now we move to Ashish. Ashish, we've seen your work in the COVID first wave. You're very regular with your terrific pictures, but COVID second wave, and Ashish was missing. I had to call you. What happened, Ashish? Where are you? And I got to know that your family, everybody, you had contracted COVID. So it's a personal story here. And now again, you're on the field. So tell us your story, and also tell us how are you coping with mental health also, because that's also on stake for most of us, because we We are reporting devastating events. We are covering them. We are capturing them. We are writing them. And most of us have also been volunteering them in some way or the other. So it's taking a toll on our mental health also. So Ashish, your story, and how are you coping up? How are you keeping your, mental health fine, balanced?
So yeah, the second wave I feel was far worse than what had happened last year. So me and my wife, we decided to, take a 2 or 3 day break from, Delhi and sort of go out from the city because it has been very overwhelming from the past 1.5 year. So yeah, we came back in the last week of March, and the new infection numbers were going up. And initially, as soon as the second wave began, my wife was started showing symptoms of COVID. So she had around 100.4 fever on a Sunday morning when we were supposed to go for a scheduled Sunday run. And she was like, I'm not feeling well, and I don't think I'll be able to make it this time. So it's best that you go. So as soon as I came back, we started, to check what was. I actually asked her what was happening with her because she was, a bit skeptical, telling me what had actually happened. So she had fever, and we got her tested the next day, and she was positive. We had no idea how she had got the virus, and she had developed fever, and later on she had on the 4th or 5th day, doctor had actually diagnosed her with the COVID pneumonia. And on one of those days, one of the doctors actually suggested us to hospitalize, but thankfully we were able to treat her at home. But all this took a mental toll on both of us. I think this is the first time ever that I've spent like 25 days at home. I've never been locked like this. I'm not used to this. At least earlier we used to move a little, go up, around the house here and there. But this was being in isolation, being in separate rooms. This was something very different, and I've never experienced this. I've, never gone through this. It was so that I was diagnosed with PTSD symptoms, and I was on medication for a very long time after she recovered. So yeah, this is what the journey has been so far, and I've been, trying to cope up with, recover in my own way that I can.
So thank you so much. Thank you, Ashish, for sharing your perspective. And now you're back on field. So we'll come back to you. I'll go back to Mr. Atul, okay? Tell us something, because when everybody is shooting a similar thing, I mean, pandemic, it's an equalizer. We are seeing similar visuals from Delhi, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Rajasthan, Haryana, and every other state, because, crisis is same, patients are same, there is oxygen deficiency everywhere. So tell us, like, how do photojournalists in such times look for different exclusive things? What all should they keep in mind? And because exclusivity is also very important, like, how to look for new angles, new perspectives. I'm asking you this question because a lot of journalism students from various J colleges have joined us. So that's why, it will be a learning thing for them.
Can I just correct you? There's nothing called exclusive in this situation. I wouldn't use the word, I'm sorry, but I wouldn't use the word exclusive because seeing the gravity of the situation, there's nothing exclusive. And I don't want to even do anything exclusive. Means what is there in, I think I can use the correct word is perspective. I think what most of the photojournalists is what we are planning to, what we try to do is, if I can say for everyone, like around here, photojournalism is all about perspective. I doubt nobody even had a thought about exclusivity here because the news was not exclusive. Whatever is happening in front of us, like, whether it's oxygen crisis, whether death, whether it's remdesivir, or whether it's like helplessness, or somebody is doing good work, or somebody is in crisis, or anything. Everything we are trying to show a perspective from a different, like all different scenarios with different perspective. I think what makes us apart from each other, or a visual language, is the way we think, the way we approach, the way we try to convey. I think it's all about our thought process. I think that is what more is important. Like, you can go to the same situation, and all of us, I'm sure, can come out with the different images. It's all about what we think and what we want to convey. I think we just, like, it's a cliche term that camera is just a tool, but it is, because we're trying to tell stories, like, how different reporters will use the same scenario to use a different language, right? The words. It's just a matter of that. Like, you need to understand what you want to say and what you want to convey. How efficiently, how different is all about you. It's your perspective, what you want to say and how you want to say. I'm just trying to keep it very short because everybody should get a chance to say. So it's all about perspective.
Thank you so much, Atul. Soumya, did you face any kind of intimidation? I mean, while shooting, was it challenging this time? Are there any stories that you want to share? We can't hear you, Soumya. You just have to unmute yourself.
I think in terms of the challenges, I would just like to touch upon a little more upon, the mental health issues, because after I came back, and I did not shoot as much in the second wave as I did in the first wave, but after I came back from the shoot, I spoke with my editor at the Time magazine, and he asked me, did you sleep well? And I was surprised he asked me that question, because I did not sleep well, And I think, and everybody here will agree, that photographing these situations is never easy. And as much as people can say that, photojournalists act like vultures or whatever they may say, I mean, that's no challenge to put out, but I can really tell you that anyone who's going out and witnessing and exposing themselves to situations as these regularly, there are major mental health repercussions for it. And it's really important for us to understand and address them, And in terms of the people, I think the people had too many things on their plate to be bothered with what I was doing there. I could just hang around in places and I could photograph, and they were fine with it. I didn't really have challenges in terms of the places that I was going to, but it was more of a personal thing.
Thank you, Soumya. Thank you. Now we move to Himanshu. There's a question that has come from audience side, that what keeps the photojournalist going every day, and what keeps him, There's a question that what motivates a photojournalist to go out and keep photographing, although pandemic is deadly and take your life? So there's a question from the audience, I believe is some J school student.
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. And first of all, we are professionals. We are here to do this thing. It's our work actually. जैसे हर किसी का काम होता है जो उसको करना होता है जीवन भर, वैसे ही हमारा काम है जो हमें करना है, हमें देखना है क्या हो रहा है. और प्रोफेशनल पर इस पर जिस ग्रेविटी का चीज था, the kind of depth this second wave had, the emotional trauma, the happenings, the kind of scenes which were everywhere. As Atul wonderfully said, it's more of a perspective or perception. आप क्या सोच रहे हैं? I will just carry forward that thing which Atul had said. Being a professional, it's our work to do that. But besides that, as you know, everyone has camera these days. Even at crematorium, the crematorium guys are also filming it. जो उनका relative एक दो साथ आया, they are filming it. The ambulance driver is filming it. Anyone passerby, he also has a mobile. He's also, someone is doing it live. Facebook live चल रहा है crematorium से, वहाँ से Twitter पे चल रहा है live. So उस सब के बीच में what's the role of a photojournalist? I mean, what's a man with a huge lens and a camera and gadgets और जो भी है वो lens बदल रहा है, aperture change कर रहा है. What's his role there? So what keeps us going is that a photojournalist kind of has a sense that he will say it more sensitively. He he will say it better. He's able to see what's happening. And despite all the mobiles, all the cameras, all the lives going on from the crematorium, from the hospital wards, from the OPD of hospitals, a photojournalist has a certain sensitivity in him, which kind of stops him from doing it just for the sake of a flashy visual, a shocking thing happening, flames leaping up. उसके मन में होता है कि वो उसको ज्यादा संवेदनशीलता से शायद उस चीज को कर पाएगा, है ना। और इसके लिए वो कई चीजें करता भी है। बीइंग अ प्रोफेशनल ऐसा नहीं है कि आप क्रीमेटोरियम गए तो अगर आप यू आर गेटिंग कैरिड अवे बाय व्हाट्स हैपनिंग, आपको वहां पर भी एपर्चर देखना होता है, आपको वहां पर भी लेंस बदलना होता है, आपको वहां पर भी सेंसिटिव रहना होता है ना। आपको उनको रेस्पेक्ट करना होता है, आप जिनकी पिक्चर ले रहे हैं, अगर कोई वहां रिलेटिव है, यू हैव टू पोजिशन योरसेल्फ in a certain way at the crematorium, in the hospital. It was sensitive beyond our imagination, जो सीन सामने हो रहा था। और इस बार तो ये भी था कि आपको खुद सब्जेक्ट बनने का खतरा था, है ना। आप फोटो खींच रहे हो और पता चला कि 3 दिन बाद आप भी सब्जेक्ट बन गए हो, है ना। यू आर ऑल्सो ऑन द बेड एंड आपके ऊपर कोई कैमरा लेके खड़ा हो सकता था। सो दिस थिंग वाज ऑल्सो कॉन्स्टेंटली गोइंग ऑन, है ना, कि खुद को सेफ भी रखना है। और ये सेंसिटिविटी को बढ़ाता भी था हमारा, कि हम भी कल को ये हो सकते हैं। सो दीज आर फ्यू थिंग्स व्हिच कीप्स अस गोइंग, द प्रोफेशनलिज्म एंड a very faint voice within that we will be rather show it more sensitively. Visually it will be more better and sensitive.
Can I, is it okay if I can add a short thing?
No,
I know it's out of,
please go ahead. No, please go ahead.
What Himanshu said, I just wanted to add a small incident. I hope you guys don't mind.
Of course not.
Please.
See, this is not the first crisis which I've been covering. Like, I'm sure everybody's covered that. I remember when Himanshu was talking, I remember one incident, because you talked about what keeps us going is there's small incidents I want to share from tsunami. When tsunami happened, I was working for Outlook magazine long back, and I had gone to Tamil Nadu, where there was lots of death. Again, like the same thing, the people were displaced, death, devastation, human property, everything. Our job is to say what is there, and show the news to the world. So somewhere people can't go, we have to reach to those places and say what is happening. I remember the second day when I was just going out with my driver, who was also helping me out with the translation, and we stopped at the evening, we stopped at one place where there was a mass cremation was happening, and I saw there was young children were buried by their parents, like 4-year-old, 5-year-olds. You've seen so much devastation, death, and normally as a photojournalist, we try to control our emotions and we try to tell story, because we go, it's not like I'm a visitor, or it's not I'm a tourist. I'm there with the purpose to tell stories of people. I somehow froze by seeing those vast cremation, where the 40-50 young boys and girls, a 4-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year people are crying, and they're just trying to bury them together, because it was such a horrific thing. And I'm also a human being, even though I'm a photographer or a seasoned photographer. I've seen so much. I just froze, and I was just maybe I was just telling myself, just pick up a camera and take pictures, but I couldn't do it. I was emotionally overpowered. There's one person with the young child, his son, or because I couldn't speak much. And he comes very close to me, maybe 2 feet, not even that. And he just cries and he tells me something. I thought I must have offended him, and that I'm there with his camera, because I had not taken a single picture. I was just trying to control my emotions, and I was just looking at him completely frozen. And he's just crying and he's telling me, and my driver is nudging me and telling me, take a picture. And I couldn't understand why he's telling me to take a picture. And this guy just telling me. And then my driver said, he wants you to take a picture, do your job, and tell the world what's happening. Why aren't you doing your job? I felt ashamed of myself that day, saying that I'm not a bystander. I'm then gone there to do job, and somebody else who's grieving is reminding me to tell me to do my job. And it just shivered everything. And I somehow managed to shoot pictures and go, and that kept me going. That reminds me that, okay, there's a purpose. If somebody else who is going through that situation reminds me, I should, and that thing is there. I can't find the words because I'm still feeling emotionally overpowered by that situation was such, that experience was such, like this kind of a situation happens with us. So it is people have to somewhere realize that, like, no, we are human beings. We are doing our jobs. Like, no, we are telling people the stories. And this incident I will never forget in my life. So I'm sorry, I
Sabina,
jumped in, but
Yes,
like,
yes,
this was
Anandito.
important.
I'll also add on to this.
It's
Yes.
beautiful.
We're coming to you, Anandito. Vasebi. Yes, go ahead.
We
Thank you,
were,
Anil, for this, for sharing with us. We know students often ask us as a journalist how to not be a part of the incident you're covering, how to hold your emotions, how to write, how to objectively write. So similar is the thing with photojournalists, how to actually, remember that we are there to report. We are there to shoot. We are there to see things with closer perspective through your lens or through your pen. So it's very, very important because we are touching upon these points again and again because students have joined us, journalism students, and it's a learning discussion for them. Yes, Anandito, please go ahead.
We have been hearing a term vultures or
Yes.
vulture
Yes.
journalism.
Yes.
Now, like Atul said, mask remission is not a new phenomena. Whenever such a disaster happens, just to handle the overwhelming number of bodies, such things are, organized or do take place. And I would ask a person who is pinpointing, saying that we are doing vulture journalism, would it be better that we turn a blind eye towards what's happening and not cover it, then rather have a document which has witnessed such a disaster in the history of
Mankind.
and the mankind, or if I could say the world, because this is not a tragedy of a war or an earthquake or something which is beyond control. This is something that could have been controlled, that could have been checked, but somewhere somehow it went berserk and out of hand. So I would say it is better we do document it as a part of history, to remember that, okay, this kind of things shall never be repeated again, and not turn a blind eye. So I'll rather be a vulture and do my job and not be a peacock and sit idle.
Thank you, Anandito. There's a question. Yes, Soumya, do you want to add?
Just to add to what Anandito and everyone's been saying, we never say that why is a doctor treating a patient very objectively and not being emotional about the state of the doctor. It's just like that. I remember when I was an intern photographer, and something really funny would be happening in front of me, my camera would be down and I'd just be standing and laughing at it. And then over a period of time, that instinct came into me that as a photographer, it's my job to pick up the camera and shoot. And over a period of time, and that's just human behavior. It's gone to an extent where if I don't know how to deal with the situation, I pick up my camera because that's
You're not
and sort of a. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
So I'm saying it becomes a sort of a defense in a situation where I don't know how to deal with it. You know, I've been in places where I've lost a very close friend and I do not know how to deal with it. And the way I deal with it is that I take out my phone and take a picture for memory and keep it. So, you know, these are just ways. It's, and even, and I'm sorry I'm taking this long, but I saw those objections being raised about Getty Images selling. I mean, are we really saying that the business of journalism should not exist? And if that is what we're saying, then we should not expect to be informed citizens, right? We need to understand. I don't understand why journalists are expected to be poor. You know, I mean, I'm sorry, passion does not fill stomach, and we have the right to earn. And for someone like Getty Images, that's a contract that's true for all your photographs. It's not just true for editorial photographs. That is how news is used, just in case you did not know. So it's kind of a shame that, you know, I've seen articles by some ill-informed journalists criticizing that as well, which is a shame.
Yeah, I have been termed as a Maut ka Saudagar, and
thank you guys for, you know, speaking out and for actually, you know, telling people that what our job is. Often we are asked, not only photojournalists, even journalists are asked, you know, how to keep yourself, you know, away from it, why you're not doing something, why you're reporting, why you're not helping the people there. So we are helping them through our stories, we are helping them through our photographs. You know, there is action, cognizance later taken. You know, that's our job. It's very important not only to tell people what's our job, but to always remind ourselves also, you know, to just
cut the long story short, we are in a way acknowledging that something has happened by photographing it.
Yes, true.
Would rather be better that we don't acknowledge and look elsewhere? That's a question to the audience.
I'll give one very small practical benefit of a photojournalist, which I'll tell you. हम अक्सर बात करते हैं कि police is corrupt, the traffic cop is corrupt, but just imagine चौराहा in a busy street, और वहां से अगर आप किसी कॉप को हटा लेते हैं तो उस चौराहे की क्या हालत होती है ना? Even if it's a corrupt cop, whatever kind of policeman it is, even if it's a mannequin cop, things get into order. Same thing happens with a photojournalist also. आप कहीं जाके कैमरा निकालते हैं and suddenly things begin to change. वो जो पायर जमा रहा है वो लकड़ी थोड़ी अच्छी जमाना शुरू कर देता है. जो एम्बुलेंस से बॉडी निकाल रहा है, he becomes more respectful. There's a fear of camera. There's a fear of photojournalist कि कल को ये बात सबको पता चल जाएगी. So camera at such a places, it's very important to have someone with a SLR camera standing at a crematorium. Things change. हमने देखा है बॉडी की रेस्पेक्ट होना शुरू हो जाती है. अगर कैमरा नहीं हो तो you can't imagine what goes on at those places. The moment you take out a camera, 50 mobile phone हो, but one SLR camera, one photojournalist, and everything falls in place. है ना? बाद में जो चीजें होंगी वो बहुत बाद की चीज है. अगले दिन कोई गलत चीज पे एक्शन होगा, but at that very point, things fall in place. The photojournalist is standing in a corner.
No, मतलब लोग जब
yes, हाँ आशीष,
लोग जब दिन का अखबार खोलते हैं तो फोटोग्राफ होता है, उसी को देख के अपनी न्यूज पढ़ते हैं और सब चीजें उसको पढ़ के देखी जाती है. तो दिस इज जो हम लोग प्रॉब्लम.
आपकी आवाज कट रही है आशीष, हाँ थोड़ा ऊंचा.
Probably the mistake that we are making at the moment, वो कल को repeat और एक document.
Right.
Yeah. I think, can I just say one thing? I think it's very important to photograph. Because why? Because see, whole conversation now, what is happening about, whether it's like, whether they're calling us bad name or a good name, whatever it is, at least a photograph can start a conversation, or Absolutely. It makes people to think.
True.
At least even one person can think out of the box. Why this is happening? What is it? I think that our whole purpose is solved. I think why we are taking images, why we are covering this, why we are documenting this, is to raise a question or make people think. Imagine, like, we don't, as Himanshu gave an example of a traffic cop. Imagine we don't take a picture today. Who's going to sit? Somebody who's sitting at home at thousands of kilometers away will know what is happening around.
Right.
Irrespective of whatever risk we are taking, it doesn't matter. We are passionate to do our job, but if we don't take that risk, if we don't take those pictures, does the news change? Does whatever is happening? I think it's people start realizing, and it's very important that people should realize that what we are trying to do is telling the world what is happening. We are not creating that, we are documenting that. That's the difference. It's a documentation. We are not creating news. So somewhere they have to understand when they're calling Anandito name or somebody else's name, they should realize that what they're trying to do, he's not doing anything, I'm not doing anything, Soumya is not. We are just going there and just documenting. If that is not there, if tomorrow some good incident is happening, we'll go and document that as well. Then why you calling only in this kind of a perspective? Why you don't tell, oh, you photojournalists are doing good stories, you're covering good stories, and it's that time nobody says anything. Why is that?
We have a question, a similar question from the audience. I would like Manisha. Manisha, are you here to answer that? This is a similar question that you're talking. This is from a student. He's saying, why do photojournalists only document shocking, sad, tragic visuals? Why not positive visuals of helping doctors, volunteers, common man helping each other? Why not those visuals? And why did press not take the role of a war room to provide intensive focus on help instead of painting a herd moment of all pains and all intimidations? I mean, this is what we have been discussing, that yeah, of course you do photograph good and bad both. So what's happening, basically you photograph that. So Manisha, would you like to answer this thing, like why do
I would want to add on to this.
Yes, go ahead.
If I may, sorry Manisha.
One after another. Yeah.
Whenever there is something good,
which
is effective, if that happens, it is documented. Like everyone here would have shot a Gurudwara offering free oxygen to people. So that was a good deed out of going out of the way and helping people, because I myself have got calls from friends saying that XYZ person is on oxygen and the cylinder will be empty by the evening and there is no way to get a refill. So whatever good, whosoever was doing it, has been documented. It is just a perception that people think only the disastrous part have been shot, which is not the case. Whenever we do a coverage, one should look it as a in a wholesome way. It is not just the crematoriums, it is also the positive parts, be it a government or a volunteer, people distributing food. Everything is, and everyone out here and others have equally been at it with same passion. Over to you, Manisha.
Thank you so much, Anandito. Yeah, Manisha, can we have from you?
So, taking a few points from everyone here, I agree that it's our profession and we have to be there and we have to capture every moment, irrespective how we are judged, termed as vultures. To answer that question, which you asked, as Anandito said, that we have covered everything from crematorium to Gurudwara, distributing food to langars, and like community services in tribal areas, then outside hospitals, outside mortuaries. We have covered every aspect of news this time. It's not only COVID. In this past 1 year, a lot of things happened in India, starting from farmers' protest, Delhi riots, and everything. We have, as photojournalists, we have tried to cover each and every side of the story. So the viewers who, so I also like been asked on Instagram or on Twitter, on Facebook, that why you always why are you showing negative things, and you are spreading negativity among everyone when everyone is trying to be optimistic. I want to ask those people that, like, I know that it's required to be optimistic at that point of time, but it's also important to see the reality. And what we are seeing outside, our cameras are seeing the same thing, and we are capturing it, and like it, we are giving it out to everyone. So it's not from our side that we have not given a balanced perspective of every news cycle. However, I also want to add something to, not add, it's something my point of view, that while covering such news, like on the in the crematorium or outside mortuary or everything, I have seen various photojournalists being insensitive and not uh, um, like not caring about what their subject wants that time. If someone is looking for space and someone is asking them not to click them, or respect their privacy, and you, as photojournalist, even if our camera knows that that's the best moment to capture, we have to respect that and like keep our cameras down. Like, yeah, this is my observation from like past, whatever this pandemic I have covered from.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Manish. I've been seeing your terrific pictures from Andhra Pradesh and now from West Bengal. And, thank you so much for sharing with us. My question now, we are moving towards the last leg of the panel discussion. There's a question that, Ashish, we come to you, being a photojournalist, pandemic is happening, sab jagah, you can't miss out on pandemic. Chahe koi jaise health reporter bhi hai, koi political reporter bhi hai, to pandemic is everywhere. Even education reporter bhi abhi pandemic hi dekh raha hai. So as photojournalist bhi, everything is revolving around pandemic. Schools are shut, tourist places are shut, everything. Pandemic is the main this thing. So how to look at, how to focus on different things as well. There are other stories also happening. So as photojournalist, are you able to do that?
Not at the moment, Tabina. I think अभी तो वैसा कुछ मौका मिल नहीं रहा है कि मतलब हम लोग उस चीजों पे फोकस कर सके, because there's a lot has been happening, the oxygen crisis in Delhi and the crematoriums. We were like overwhelmed with the situation, what was happening in Delhi. But I'm sure there'll be lots of stories. There's always an aftermath. There's always an aftermath, and I'm sure sooner or later we'll start documenting those. There are a lot of stories coming. There have been a lot of people. There have been COVID orphans. A lot of children who have lost one or both of their parents. So those are the stories I think we'll be covering in future. But as of now, the focus was completely on, the pandemic and the breaking news. But there'll be more stories, and there's always an aftermath.
Yeah, thank you.
That'll be documented.
Yeah, thank you. Now it's our last thing. So we're going to Atul. Atul, just one such incident that you thought there was an impact to your picture. You tried to make a difference, and any story, any memorable story from this stressful time, like we had COVID second wave?
There are so many stories. I think every time you go out, you set out with the camera, there are stories. Stories are everywhere. And it's not one thing which is not touched you. I think every time you go out, there are different aspects of different things touches you. It changes you. It changes your perspective. It changes the way you look at things. It changes the way you think. It changes the way you do things. It changes. It's ever learning, ever growing. When you set out to take a picture, and when you come back, when you're going, you are a different person. When you're coming back, is a different person. because you meet so many people, you have a conversation. It's sometimes what people think, we just take the camera out and we just take pictures and we come back. No, what we do is we do a conversation with people. It's not only with the camera, but you have a human conversation with people. You speak to people. You have somewhere people being with a camera, somewhere people have a somewhere comfort. They come and do a conversation with you. They empty their hearts to you, right? So you somewhere knowingly, unknowingly, you lend your shoulder. You give a satisfaction a person to a person. I remember that there was a family who was going through such a bad phase, and they saw a camera, and as Soumya said that, no, sorry, Manisha was saying that photographers were insensitive, but sometimes you have to be too sensitive, that you have to just, like, even though you see a brilliant image, you just don't want to shoot that because you will invade their privacy. So you just wait, and people will come and talk to you. People respect that. People come and talk to you. People tell their stories to you, and somewhere they say thank you to you, saying that at least I could share myself, like. And when you hear that, somewhere you knowingly, unknowingly, you take a part of that, and your perspective changes. You change, your thinking change. And I always feel that more than what I've shot, it's more than what I don't shoot is very important. Is what learning means. Somewhere you think, oh, this is my best picture. No, this is not my best picture. My best pictures I have not shot, because I've seen them and I've not shot them. I don't know how to put it in the word. I'm very bad with words, but this is what my feeling is like. I can tell you my experience. I don't see the best pictures of mine. I see my best pictures. I've missed it because somewhere, that could have been a best picture, and that is somewhere sometimes you have to take a back.
We lost
those pictures in your mind, but you don't want to take pictures. You want to take those pictures because I wanted to respect their privacy. People were reviving them, and I said no, I want to stop. I told my photo editors that some of the pictures I have, I made a point and shot because people were okay, but I'm not filing them because I feel they are too insensitive. So I don't want to file them, and I hope you respect that. So it is decisions which you have to take it. Like, no, sometimes with the flow you go and do it. Sometimes because photography is a process of very intuitive. It's very intuitive process. You have to go with your intuition. You have to go with the flow. I don't know whether I'm touching the question, what you're saying, but I'm just saying the process, what happens.
No, thank you so much for saying this. And thank you so much for saying that your best pictures are the ones that you didn't capture, but they're there on your mind. The visuals are there on your mind. Before we go to Soumya, Ashish has raised hands. So we will go to Ashish first. Yeah, Ashish.
So Tabina, since we were talking about stories and you were talking about the other stories, so there was this story of Mr. Shanti, which was at the Simapuri crematorium ground. Mr. Shanti has been helping people 24/7 to cremate bodies. So that was also a story. I just wanted to add that. He was a person who was helping people, and there was a body which was lying there for the last 48 hours. I met him. I spoke to him. He was like, the ambulance people came in, 2 people came and just dropped the body at the cremation ground, and nobody came in to claim this. But he has been helping such people. He has been helping who have been abandoned, and he's been there 24/7 for several other people in Delhi.
True.
That's
one
story, and that's positive.
I so agree with you because
I think all of us did the story on him. Just to clear that, everybody did a story on him, and it's a positive story.
I think every city has Mr. Shanti. There is somebody or else in every city that has been relentlessly working very hard, and we have such people in rural India. We have such people in every city. In Jaipur also, there are so many people who were out there working 24/7. So every city has such people, and of course they get photographed, they get covered, because these are the stories, the good stories, the human interest stories people want to read and people want to see in the times of pandemic, when you are surrounded with so much devastating news. So now we go to Soumya. Soumya, are there such, because this is the last phase of this. So are there any stories, anything that you want to talk about, ethics, stories that you have come across in these 2 months? Yeah. Have to unmute yourself.
Yeah. You hear me now? I would actually like to start with touching on some things that we've discussed here, and I also went through the chat, and I see that it's a gravitating issue. You know, the fact that the images that photojournalists have brought out have been more shocking and tragic, but I think it's also how the mind works. You know, there have been different kind of images as well, but the kind of images that touch us and that move us are the tragic ones, right? So I think that's one conflict which exists and which we need to understand. There are obviously the editorial pressures that photographers have, and a lot of times you'll produce images which will eventually not make it forward, and the editors will need you to produce a certain kind of images. Coming back to the stories bit, through the pandemic, there are a couple of stories that I did which have managed to bring in results, and I think those are the little moments of joy in the lives of photojournalists who are otherwise just documenting tragedy, and it's really easy for you to get disillusioned because you don't see results coming. Last year I was photographing a few migrants, and I was photographing them over a period of 1 month, and I'd gone back to their houses repeatedly in the villages to see how they were progressing through the pandemic when they did not have work. After we came out with that story for the Washington Post, there was a company which came forward to offer a monthly stipend to the family for a period of 6 months so that they could sustain themselves. I think that particular incident I heard was one of the very satisfying ones, because Anandito, I think your microphone is on. Okay, I will continue nonetheless. So that was one of the things. The second thing was, and I'm again going back to the story that I've already spoken about, is the cover of the Time magazine. So when the cover came out, the owner of Time magazine saw the cover, and he was so moved by the story and by what was written and the image that he decided to dispatch an aircraft of help to India right away. So I think these are the kind of moments which make you believe in the stories that you do, and which kind of help you sustain this profession and believe in the goodness of what you do.
Thank you, Soumya, for saying this. I mean, these are the small joys that we enjoy. There is this even small impact on our stories at the end of the day, because, you know, this gives us most of the joy. Now we move to Himanshu. Himanshu, we are in the last phase. Do you want to add something? Did you also face some kind of issue like privacy, what should be, you know, published and what not to? You were deciding any such things or anything that you want to add?
This is a decision which you take there and then, because what we bring to our offices is something which has been decided at the spot itself. That, as Atul said, there are very beautiful moments which we can't capture. Similar, there's a lot of things going on in the mind of a photojournalist at the spot. One of them is this beautiful thing. You are absorbed because he's a person also, and he can be a poet inside him. There can be a poet inside him. There can be a cinematographer inside him. There can be a journalist inside him. So he is watching it, and he's also thinking about the controls of his camera. He's also thinking what is the news, and his priority is to be sensitive at that moment also. And so many things are going on in the head, as all the photojournalists know it very well. It's not an easy job, although we get used to it, and to us it does seem like we do it every day. But when we sit and analyze during discussions like this, then we actually realize that it's a very difficult thing. It's not the leisure of coming to your desk and writing down in words, thinking, checking in the Google for the grammar or for the right word, or it's so spontaneous. it's so happening at that moment that I'll tell you an incident which happened during last month itself. I was obviously, because as Soumya said, that it was such a grave thing, the crematorium thing. And so there was a man who was alone and he was waiting near his ambulance at the Adarsh Nagar crematorium. And I usually wait very long before taking out the camera at such a place. And you just have to kind of sense, just like someone is in the wild and waiting for the nature to get accustomed to his presence. So that has to happen, whether they get accustomed to our presence or not. And the guy was in a PPE kit and waiting for his turn, for his relative to come to be brought out from the ambulance. And he was fiddling with his mobile constantly. And when the body was coming out, instead of helping the persons with the body, he was making a video, and he was so overwhelmed with emotions that he was not able to do it. He was kind of fumbling, and since I had the camera in my hand, and I thought that, is it a picture that he is taking picture of his own relatives while the photojournalists are ridiculed everywhere that you are taking pictures, but there the relatives also are taking pictures of their loved ones. They also want to have a good memory of. So I was just standing there. I picked up my camera and he rushed to me, Vijayji. He became a kind of friend of me later. He said that, "Iska audio kaise chalega?" There his mother is getting cremated and he's asking me, "Iska audio kaise chalega?" Because he's kind of flushed with emotions. And he don't know how to operate that mobile phone. And no one has come with him to cremate his mother. His dilemma is that whether to help with the cremation or to salvage whatever last moments he has of his mother, because he hasn't seen her for 15 days. She was in hospital. He was at home. He couldn't visit him in the ward. This is the only moment that he is seeing his mother. So should he take part in the rituals, or should he salvage those moments in his mobile phone? So he gave me, he was crying and he gave me his phone, that, "Can you please shoot it for me?" So that's what I did. I took his mobile phone and I said, "Okay, I'll do it for you. You keep it in your pocket. I'll shoot everything for you." And he was, so to a bystander, it might seem that a very impolite thing that someone is shooting his mother while she's being cremated. But the moment you step in their shoes, and photojournalist has to do it often, they have to step into the shoes of the mothers, of sisters, of fathers, of brothers. Actually, they have to do it. That transposition, that juxtaposition that happens, you kind of feel. And it often happens that our eyes are also wet while we are shooting. So you just have to control your emotions and again go for the picture. So I remember that touching moment. Then I sent him.
Beautiful
add
story.
one
You
thing.
should write it somewhere. I mean, it's such a moving story and it's such a visually rich story. I can really imagine him, And maybe he was also taking the video or a photograph he wanted to show to his near and dear ones who equally missed, participating in the last rituals of their mother, of their relative. I mean, since he being there and, photographing, his mother. So Anindito, last words from you. Then we go to quickly to Manisha and Ashish. Yeah, quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, left with 5-7 minutes. Yeah, Anindito.
When we are talking about personal stuff, I have been to Nigam Bodh Ghat, where both my parents were, cremated. And it was in the first wave, I completely avoided going there because I do not want to visit that place again. But the gravity of the situation was such that I let go of whatever inhibitions were there, and I still went on and shot there. So, I mean, the responsibility of documenting whatever is happening is much more than a personal dilemma.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Anindito, for saying this. We move to Manisha. Manisha, Ashish, both of you. Pehle Manisha, then Ashish. Okay, there's Rajan's question. It was happening in the chat box. Now he's asked this again. My question stands that are there not edits between what you covered with utmost sincerity and sensitivity and what is brought out to the viewers? Who would like to answer this question? Are there no, my question stands that are there not edits between what you covered with utmost sincerity and sensitivity and what is brought out to the viewers? Who would like to?
I can take that, Tabina.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I think when we're having conversation about what an audience eventually sees in terms of photographs, it's important to understand that in between the photographer and the audience, there's an editorial team that sits, you know. So a lot of times, an image which I think might be more sensitive and less sensational will be dumped for an image which is more sensational, right? And a lot of those decisions change how the images that we create eventually get consumed by the audience. So there is certainly a difference in what we shoot and how it gets portrayed. The only place where we do have that control is our social media handles, right? Because that is one place which we can curate for ourselves.
Thank you so much, Soumya. Now, one last question, two basically. One from my question. No, this is what will be your say for an upcoming or willing to be a photojournalist in this situation, Manisha? Yeah.
I'm also very new to this field, so I don't know what to tell them. But be careful and be safe, and be sensitive whenever you are capturing a photo or a subject. Stories are not dead because maybe cases have come down, but the aftermath of COVID is still there, and there are a lot of stories. People are the suffering hasn't ended yet, so everyone can go out and shoot, and we have to bring out the stories visually or written, whichever medium it is. We have to get the stories out.
Thank you so much, Manisha. Now we move to Ashish. Ashish, this last line from you. What are the challenges that you're facing now? What do you think now is the story? Now, as a photojournalist, you should go and shoot. Hospitals are done. Now, what is the new thing that you should shoot? Yeah.
I think
आवाज कट रहा है आशीष. हाँ.
1 second.
आवाज कट रहा है आशीष. एक बारी unmute then mute.
Once.
ठीक है.
Can you hear me now? Hello.
Yeah, go ahead. Huh.
So that's what I'm saying. So we have to keep documenting. After all, that's the job of a photojournalist. And it's a great responsibility, I feel, to photograph. Photographs play a big role, and it's the history for the future that we are documenting at the moment. So that, in future such disasters don't happen again 100 years down the line. We are ready to face a situation like this in a better manner if at all that happens again. So I hope it doesn't. So it was painful to see people who died gasping of breath, in Delhi. And I hope we are all well prepared and such unfortunate things don't happen again. And, these photographs play a big role. That's what I hope for.
Thank you so much, Ashish. Now, because we're closing the session, because we opened the session with Atul. Atul, this last line you would like to conclude this. We had a very enriching discussion. We got to hear so many diverse perspectives from our, brilliant, terrific photojournalists. So, any last line that you would like to, yeah. To unmute. Yeah.
Is that audible?
Yeah, please go ahead.
I think I'll just tell the young photojournalists who are upcoming photojournalists who wants to be a photojournalist. I think just don't think too much. I think people can say what they want to say. If you're passionate and if you believe in yourself, just do what you believe in. I think the best thing is to just, because your heart will always tell you. And most of the photojournalists, if you ask, they don't think by brain. Everybody thinks by heart. And your heart guides you when you're taking pictures. How much ever there's a calculation of aperture, shutter speed, it's just a technical. It will not get all the magic happens by heart. Just follow your heart, follow your intuition, and just do what you believe in. I think that's the best thing you can do it, irrespective of whoever says what. Also, there is one important practical thing is, being a photojournalist is not that easy because it's a lethal combination. You have to be artist as well as the athlete. These are two simultaneously apart and two different ends. You have to be athlete as well as the artist. And if you have that deadly combination, you can become a very good photojournalist because you need that stamina, creativity, everything. So just let your heart guide, follow your heart, follow your dream. Don't believe in anything. Just do good, be safe, do what you're supposed to do.
Thank you so much, Atul, for saying these words. I mean, what a beautiful, end to our discussion. Thank you so much, our dear panelists, for taking out time. You were, traveling, most of you, and photojournalists usually, you speak through your pictures, but, coming up together and talking here. Thank you so much. Swati, now all over to you. Thanks. Can't hear you, Swati. You have to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. Thank you, Tabina. I think it was an eye-opening discussion for all of us. In fact, I learned a lot today. What goes behind a camera, we just see a picture and probably we come out with different names. Like everybody said that people are calling these pictures and people who are taking these kind of pictures with different kind of names. But there is a lot of mental strength, emotional strength that goes behind taking a picture, and there are minute decisions that people take while clicking a picture. And I think this was something missing, which people, in fact, people like me were not aware. We just look at the picture with a perspective that is surrounded by opinions of people who are talking around us. But there's so much gravity in taking and clicking those kind of pictures which can change the story, which can bring the truth. I think it has been an eye-opener, and I think everybody in the audience must have loved this session. So I thank all the panelists, to bring out their perspective and making us understand that what it goes behind taking pictures and what it went behind, taking and addressing the pandemic. And like many of you have shared stories that due to a picture and what was behind the picture, there were a lot of people who came out and helped different kind of families in the best possible way. So I think everybody should be grateful to people like you. I personally feel that you people are doing amazing job. So thank you so much, everyone. And I salute the vigor and the leadership exemplified by the panel today and wish them very best as they continue to highlight the ground realities for us. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Swati.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.